There is no good and bad emotions, man. There's a gray area here. We can't be telling people to stay away from feelings of frustration, anger, depression, sadness. That's an inevitable part of life. That's something that people are just going to naturally feel in their lives at some point, one point or another. What I've learned is that all of these emotions are neither good or bad. They're necessary. All of them, right? Happiness is necessary, but also so is sadness. So is anxiety, but so is excitement, right? So is grief, but so is joy. And with all of these necessary emotions, we no longer tell people to stay away from certain emotions and only try to gravitate towards certain emotions.
How's it going, Thrivers? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Thriver Coach Junior, who you're going to be seeing a lot more of on this YouTube channel. And you're also going to be seeing the other coaches on this YouTube channel. It's going to be more than just my familiar face on here. But the reason we wanted to do this is so you can hear these principles and these frameworks from different angles. Because I say a lot of this stuff in my hundreds and hundreds of videos, but maybe hearing it from a different face or from a different angle or perspective might be able to help you have that mind shift. So you're going to be seeing a lot more educational videos on this channel from the coaches who have been through our recovery system and recovered and got their lives back. And if you haven't seen Coach Junior's transformation video yet, he actually made a couple of them. The first one, you can click up here and see that. That's when he was really first starting to make some good progress. And then we did an updated one, I think it was a year or two later, when he was even better. And you can watch that one right up here. But Junior, in case people are just finding our channel right now, you want to quickly introduce yourself and what you do with CFS Recovery.
Yeah, sure, man. Hey everybody, my name is Junior. I am a coach here at CFS Recovery, but first and foremost, before me being a coach, I was also initially a thriver myself. I was sick with this condition for about 2 years before I found Miguel, joined the program back in 2019. He ended up helping me get my life back completely, and the rest is history from there. Moving forward, we've built an entire system together and a program where we go on to help tons and tons of people behind the scenes and helping them get their lives back as well. As you can see through this YouTube channel, there's tons of recovery stories out there as well. I'm looking forward to sharing my tips and tricks and all the things that I've learned in my experience, and hopefully that will lead you to a life of thriving health of your own, right? So thanks, Miguel, for introducing me. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. And Junior, along with the other coaches, have been very instrumental into helping us develop these recovery systems. Back in the day, we only had that one recovery system, Recovery Jumpstart, which you were in, Junior. But now we have so many other solutions for people, even many free solutions, which you guys can actually find out in the description down below with the Recovery Foundation's masterclass. But essentially, for the last couple of years, we've been building upon all this knowledge that we're gathering from working with hundreds of people over literally thousands of hours of calls with people with CFS. We see what's working, we see what doesn't. What's one of the first steps people recovering? I know for me, it was even believing that it was possible, but what do you see in a lot of people?
For me, I think even before that, before I could even think about steps that I wanted to take in order to recover, I think the first thing before that was even just believing, like you said, that recovery was even possible in the first place. You'd be surprised how many people actually don't believe full recovery is possible. But you and I, Miguel, we're a real example of just two regular guys who've had this pretty bad and ended up on the other side, fully recovered. And I think a big reason for that is because, number one, we did the work, but more importantly, number two, is that we continue to do the work and apply these principles in the form of like self-development and lifestyle changes that keep us above water and will sustain us for the rest of our lives. And more videos to come on more specific steps to take in order to get you on the other side, because I documented my entire journey. So we'll be making videos little by little. But I think that's the most important thing for me, man, because you and I have both worked with people, right? And we've experienced how actually incredibly difficult it is to get someone to make any type of progress if they actually don't believe in the process or even believe that recovery is possible in the first place.
Yeah. No, that's so true. And it makes sense. I even think about myself. There were times when most of my mindset was like, no, I'm going to have this for the rest of my life. I can't recover, because I'd be in the Google forums, Facebook groups, and all you're hearing is people who have been sick for 30, 40, 50 years, and you're not seeing any research. This was like 8 years ago when there was nothing about this stuff online. There were a couple things here and there. Funny enough, actually, I did see some things about brain retraining back in the day, but I just brushed it off. I'm like, no, this is a physical problem. It has nothing to do with my brain. I didn't know those two were interlinked. So there was a good amount of time, probably the first few years, where I actually questioned if it was possible to truly like fully get my life back, be able to run and work out like I was able to before. How about you? I'm not saying I never lost complete hope, but there were times when it was like, oh, I was running on fumes of hope. There wasn't much left there.
Yeah. And with myself and with a lot of people that I speak to, I think it's actually pretty common when your hope and faith are tested, right? Your life is completely pulled away from you. This is a very debilitating condition. It's not something that's easy to go through, to say the least. So, absolutely, me being human, I lost a lot of faith. I lost a lot of hope within the process. But if that's you, just trust and believe that too can be restored once you get back on the other side, like it has for you, Miguel, and myself.
Yeah. And I think in the beginning, what really shifted for me was after going to 30 plus different doctors and test scans, crashes, ups and downs, and lots of emergency room visits. I got so used to hearing the same thing over and over again of, oh, just rest. Oh, try this medication, supplement, blah, 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 whatever, until my back was against the wall and I had no choice but to try something drastically different. And I was begging for any kind of other opportunity that I haven't tried yet. I was willing to try anything. After all that struggle, I was in the hospital for a month. Then I got paired up with my doctor, who happened to be a psychiatrist, but he actually fully understood what was going on. He looked at my charts, big binder full of tests and scans over the years. And he said, Miguel, I know exactly what's going on. It's not all in your head, by the way. That's one of the first things he said. And
Mhm.
that is where it really helped me start to trust him, because everybody else thought it was in my head. I knew it wasn't, because I'm feeling these physical things, even though it's not showing up on tests. How is it like for you? When did you first start believing that recovery is possible? Because when he told me it was, after he validated my experience, that's when I was open enough to like listening to it. But what was it for you? Do you remember?
I don't think it was more so what it was for me that made me believe recovery was possible, but more so the things that I didn't do. So, for example, I'll try to make that a little bit more clear because I'll be honest, man, some of the things that I didn't do actually saved me in terms of how much I believed in recovery. I didn't go too much into the CFS forums or any of those Facebook groups or any of those things you see online because the narrative when you go into those places, a lot of the times, especially when I was at my sickest, was that recovery wasn't possible and this is an incurable disease. And
Yeah.
that would have more so solidified that I'm doomed for life. For me, I was lucky enough to actually not stumble upon those things, but more so be surrounded by stuff like you. I found your YouTube channel really early, and I found a lot of recovery interviews through people like Raylan. And not only that, but on top of that, I had proof myself because I think a lot of us, man, you included, when we first start getting this condition, it's like a slight relapse and then we actually recover one or two or three times before it actually like hits
Yeah.
really hard. So something that kept the faith in me was that I've recovered before. I've done it a few times or I've gotten pretty dang close. I just don't know what it takes to get on the other side, sustain and maintain that. So I think it was a combination of me not getting into those forums and those groups, but also having that proof for myself and then going online and seeing channels like yours and Raylan proving that other people have gotten well too. That combination, those ingredients poured into that pot, it just really helps solidify and keep the hope. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially when you start seeing those markers where you did make progress. So
Yeah.
that just proves to you, oh, so progress is possible. And maybe
Hmm.
we saw it at a smaller scale. If you can make a little bit of progress, you could make a lot. You just need to figure out what you did to make that progress. And
Yeah.
that's the missing link. So, like my YouTube channel, these videos I'm providing to people, and our team is going to be providing to people moving forward, pretty much what my doctor provided to me. It's like clear explanations on what's going on and explanations that made sense to me. Because once things started making sense, it was no more guesswork because I knew what was going to happen. I knew where these symptoms were coming from. I knew that the flare up was going to come. I also knew what to do when that happened. So when things started making logical sense, it actually started to make it way easier to even believe in recovery. Because prior to that, you're just winging it, hoping for the best, kind of like buying a lottery ticket, hoping you win. That's how it was for me before. I thought recovery was up to luck, not so
Hmm.
much you doing specific things in order to achieve that health. But what do you see working with people? Because you work with a lot of folks, you work with hundreds of people one on
Yeah.
one, and everybody's different. What kind of things do you see help unlock that belief in people?
I think co-regulation is really important, and being around a community that's solution focused and recovery focused is really important. So being inside our groups, whether that's the paid groups through Recovery School or Academy, or just the free group that we have in Facebook, being around other people that are doing well, getting well, and then sharing their stories, I think that can really help garner that belief. Because whilst it's great to help garner it with yourself through your own lived experience, I think it was you that actually told me this, that it's actually very hard to find motivation and inspiration when you live in an echo chamber. That's the thing, right? So being around other people that are really doing well, it can really help solidify that belief for sure. Because it's one thing to see yourself having that sparks of improvement, but it's another thing seeing other people doing it and then sharing how they did it for them, and then with you, and then you applying that and listening to the advice of the coaches, and then you get moving forward and unlocking that new level. I think that was important for me. I find it very difficult to believe that I probably could have recovered as quick as I did without a group, right? And just in my opinion, man, because we've seen this over and over, it takes a team to make recovery possible. And part of my team was you. It was my sister, it was my girlfriend, my mom, my dad, a couple doctors, and some help with my cohort within my community. It takes a team, it takes a tribe in order to get someone out of this. For someone to do it alone, I've seen it. It's rare. I commend it for sure. More community based though. I think that's something that's really important.
Yeah, definitely. Community, that's like adding nitros to the vehicle. That can help speed up
Mhm.
things along the way quite a bit. And something that helps as well is even just having a general direction of where to go in recovery. I think about it like when we have CFS, and I've said this, I've probably used this analogy 500 times, but when you're on this journey and you're not finding answers and this is like a full-time job to you and you're not getting any better, you may be getting worse, it can almost feel like you're stuck in the middle of the ocean with a inflatable rowboat with one paddle that's broken, and you're trying your hardest to get to shore, but you don't know where shore is. You don't know where north, east, southwest is. You're just stranded there by yourself, and you're paddling as hard as you can, thinking you're getting somewhere, but you zoom out and look at the big picture, you're just going in big circles. So it's almost like you think you're getting somewhere, but really you're stuck in a loop. And how are you even supposed to know when to change direction or which direction to even go? But
Mhm.
if you have a compass or something to give you some kind of direction or some kind of steps to move towards or some kind of direction to move towards, it makes it so much easier. Now it is still difficult. It can be difficult. People recover though just with YouTube videos because that kind of acts as a compass. But some people need some extra help, some extra hands on deck to row that boat because it can
Mhm.
be very difficult to do it by yourself. But that's an analogy I like to share.
Absolutely. And you know what I think is really important, man, that I think is also super understated is that there comes a point in everybody's journey that I've seen so far. The thing that can really accelerate or decelerate and really slow down somebody's recovery is how all in you are with the process. Because I was at a crossroads at one point where, and I'm not even going to lie, man, you don't know this. I'm telling you this now. When I was in the program for the first 4 months, I was definitely in some like long COVID groups or some groups about like diet and things like that. So I found myself like halfway in and then halfway out and still involved in other communities and things like that. And I came to the realization that there comes a point in everyone's journey you have to pick a side, because there is, again, like we talk about, there's a part of the community that doesn't believe you can fully recover, or they believe it's something else than the nervous system. And it was until that point where I was all in and said, I need to pick a side. Am I going to be all in with this, right? Doing the work here and believing that it's the nervous system, and trusting that, and really just blocking out all the other stuff and just solely focusing on my recovery community here and my tribe here? Or am I going to be halfway in, halfway out? Because you got to think of it like this, man. If you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who's like that, imagine being in our program, hearing that it's the nervous system doing the work, seeing people who can recover, and having the community reading all the wins. But then these people are also in other Facebook groups, hearing other people talk about it's not your nervous system, it's your gut. Miguel was never really sick. Junior was never really sick. He has anxiety. He doesn't have CFS. Your belief is literally split, and it slows down the acceleration percentage of recovery by like a significant degree. That's what I've seen. People who choose to pick one side and stay on it and stay there, and most of the time it's the side of recovery as possible, it most likely is the nervous system. I'm willing to do the work. Let's surround myself with a community that's solution oriented and believes in the same thing. That's when people start to skyrocket. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And we teach a lot about black and white thinking and gray thinking. I would say this is one of those few scenarios where it's like, yeah, it's okay to
yeah.
be black and white. For me, I dropped any other solutions, actually, any other beliefs I had about recovery once my doctor explained to me all of the recovery science, the stuff we share in the blueprint. I'll pop some pictures up on the screen. But once it started to make logical sense, I was like, I had to admit I was wrong about a lot of this stuff. And I was like, forget all that other information. That stuff didn't work. Clearly didn't work. That's why I'm still sick. This actually makes sense. So forget that other stuff. I'm going all in on this because really, what other option do I have? I already tried everything else. It didn't work. Literally did not work. So why would I keep going down that same path if it didn't work? Now, to be clear as well, those things didn't work for me. They probably worked for some other people, right? Like a lot of stuff works for other people, but if you tried it and it didn't work, there's so many forms of brain retraining. Let's use that for example. There's so many programs out there. Maybe you've tried so many other programs, right? And maybe it didn't work or the way you wanted it to, or there was a missing ingredient in that. And that's fine because it worked for some people, it didn't work for you. It's fine. Move on to the next potential solution. But once I latched onto this stuff that made sense, everything I teach on this channel is basically what he told me. Then I was all in. I was like, there's no going back. I felt like I was in a fight for my life, but I was also really excited. It felt like a fresh start because I hadn't heard any of the stuff before. So it was like a new path forward. It's almost if you're in a video game, let's use an analogy again, you're stuck in a video game, you're trying to get to the next level. You feel like you've explored the whole map. You're fully convinced you explored the whole map. You tried every formula, every option, everything you could possibly do. The next thing you realize there's been this hidden door here that whole time, but it's blended in with the wall. You go through that door and it's a completely different path, very different. And then eventually you get to the next level where you want to go. But sometimes that answer is just sitting right in front of you the whole time, but it just wasn't the right time for you to
Right.
notice that. It's like me, I heard about brain retraining before, years before I found my doctor. It wasn't the right timing though. I just wasn't, I had to go through what I went through to be open and actually, I don't want to say desperate, but I was desperate. I was willing to try anything to even give certain approaches a fair shot. So I'm glad I found him when I did because had I found him 2 or 3 years earlier, I probably wouldn't have listened as much and I wouldn't have been as severe. So there was no reason to go all in on something. So it all happens for a reason, I think.
Absolutely. And the information's still quite new, man. There's still new research coming out about how this is the nervous system. Research and information that we didn't have even just a few years ago, right? Because even back when you were sick, the modalities to help with this, brain retraining, to be honest, was somewhere at the bottom of the totem pole, right? You read all these other things like for your gut, you want to go on a special diet and take out nightshades and histamine. If you have brain fog, you want to do L-theanine mixed with caffeine. For your mitochondria, you take this supplement. For your pain, you do this. Brain retraining was at the bottom of the totem pole. But as of recently, with new research and development, and obviously proof with recovery stories and people now shouting from the rooftops, hey, I've had this for however some odd years, I'm well, it's the nervous system starting to climb up the ranks. And now we're at the point where it's like top 3 modalities to help with CFS. Ultimately, people will come to the understanding that it is the driver for everything that we experience. Hard to wrap your head around something like that, especially when you use the word brain, because it can be misinterpreted or assumed in a false way that, like you said, this could be in your head. But there's a difference between a psychological condition and a neurological condition. If it's psychological, sure, it's in your head. CBT and some therapy, trauma help could probably get you out of this if that's the case, but it's not. Neurological means that it's a mind and body combined. This is a multifaceted approach using both working together in tandem, and that's the way to get us out of this thing, man. Yeah, it's all about that balance.
Yeah. And where this made sense for me, and I started to believe that this is a part of my brain that's causing these physical symptoms, was when I started to notice that it didn't require me standing up to flare up with symptoms. Sometimes I'll just look at my phone, and if the brightness was quite high or if the music was a bit too loud, nothing's happening physically. I didn't exert physical energy, but I would feel very fatigued. My skin would start burning from using my eyes to look at a screen. So I started to connect the dots and realize, okay, this isn't all just physical, or at least physical in the sense of I move my body in this way, this much, and that equals symptoms. There's another component that I'm missing here. And when my doctor said, look, it's the overall stimulus on your body. Physical is one kind of stimulus. There's also other things like going through emotional stress or mental stress or watching a movie. All the sensations you have, Miguel, are amplified. And another thing that really helped me was realizing why I was feeling the symptoms. Again, going back to the logic, once I realized it was my nervous system trying to keep me safe because I'd already abused it so much, I couldn't take it anymore. And it was trying to protect me from myself. That was a huge shift as well because it just made sense. I looked at my life leading up to that and I'm like, yeah, I was reckless with my activity, but also my mind always ran on 1,000 miles an hour. Never really slowed down. It makes sense. I just burned up my nervous system. It's in fight or flight mode.
And all of the signs make sense to it, right? Because a lot of people try to wrap their heads around the concept of how is that possible that the brain can actually make the body react in such a physical way. And if you even look at regular daily life, there's examples all around us. Let's say you and I are about to do a talk on stage and it's a bit nerve wracking. Yes,
Yeah.
that's an emotion of anxiety, but why do physically I feel like throwing up? You
Yeah.
can pee and crap your pants just by being scared to death. And same thing with if you have like a heightened happiness or something, your heart can beat physically quick. Why wouldn't the brain be able to have the capacity to pull someone's energy away from them to stop them from doing something if it really wanted to? Because it can. And we learned that through direct example. For people who are having a hard time wrapping their heads around why and how is the brain even capable of making the physical body do it, the examples are actually all around us, even with regular people. It's a very real thing.
Yeah. And now I see the brain and the nervous system as almost one and the same. I imagine the brain up there with all its nerve endings, and then also the nervous system like going through the spine and connecting its way throughout all the way down to our fingertips. And it's all part of the same neurological system. So another example of normal everyday people experiencing these things is this is not a normal situation, but we all hear about that story of car rolls over, someone stuck under it, and then some guy comes, regular dude, not a power lifter, not a strongman, lifts up the car off of the person to save a life. How is he able to do that? On a normal day, you wouldn't be able to do that. But how does he lift 1,000 pounds like that? Because your nervous system has the potential energy to do these things. But it was only unlocked in that moment because of all the adrenaline, because it was a life or death situation. And that doesn't happen every day, but it just shows how powerful your nervous system is. Now, sometimes this stuff happens and you don't even plan it. I don't think he could have prepared for that or hyped himself up to do that. It just happened in the moment, life or death situation. But also, there's another thing I heard when I was recovering. I think it was in the book, The Brain's Way of Healing. It has a lot of the principles we teach as well. But when people get electrocuted, and they fly across the room, there's not some explosion or invisible force that blows up and pushes them away. It's because the muscles in their body contract so hard, it makes them jump across the room. So on a regular day, you can't just jump across the room, but the potential energy is in there. You just don't know how to unlock it. So it just shows the power of the nervous system. It controls everything. And also, that's another thing that started to make sense. I had to start chasing the root cause of these things because I tried addressing my adrenals, my lymphatic system, detoxes, my gut. But every time I tried to do that, it helped a little bit, but it would always come back. So there was a problem upstream that was causing all these things. And once you actually connect the dots and look at it, it's the nervous system that controls everything, right?
That's been my direct experience as well. Whether it was vitamin C mixed with potassium drink for my adrenal glands, or like I said, L-theanine mixed with caffeine for my brain fog, or whatever it was to address pain or my fatigue. It worked initially
Yeah.
until it didn't, right? And then I realized there might be something a little bit deeper that I'm not addressing because I'm always focused on, getting rid of the immediate symptom at hand on a surface level. And it works until it doesn't, and then you're back to square one all the time, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. It's a tough journey, but I think it's also sometimes it's required because you have to cross those things off the list. You have to go see the doctors, make sure you don't have any other health issues, make sure there's nothing else going on. You have to do your due diligence, but that process can be very frustrating and annoying if they're not finding anything. Now, sometimes they'll find something and they'll fix it, but you'll still have the symptoms. So then you start going deeper down the rabbit hole. And eventually, most of the time when people find us or end up in one of our communities, it's after they've done all those things. They've tried all the offered solutions, it hasn't worked. And what we're doing here is drastically different from anything else they've tried. So then they start to think, okay, there's a chance I'll get drastically different results. Worth a shot, though. Definitely for you guys watching right now, definitely get your tests and scans done. Rule out anything else before implementing these things. Once you've done your due diligence, then that's a good time to implement this stuff, because if nothing's showing up on those tests, then highly likely a hypersensitive nervous system from what we've seen.
Absolutely. And I think I speak for myself, but also a lot of people that I've worked with. I think going in a logical order is really important in terms of how you want to approach this condition, because a lot of people will just straight jump into the science, try to get into the deepest root of things and try to fix their core issues like that are so buried under 10 layers of other baggage. You want to really take a step back just for a few moments, zoom out and take a look at your overall situation. I'll use like a scary movie for an example, right? When things start to go bad, when the movie starts to go left and the plot starts to change a little bit, people start to panic. And the thing is, if people are freaking out, it's very difficult to find your way out of an actual situation because you're not in the headspace, you're not in the right mind. And so I take that back to recovery. And I see people trying to analyze their symptoms. I see people trying to find solutions for their symptoms, maybe even do a little bit of the deeper trauma work and the therapy and whatever it is to really get them out of their situation. But the real first question is, before you can even think about doing any of that, how are you even responding to your immediate situation right now of your symptomatic experience? Most of the time, what we find is for people, especially in the beginning stages, not well. That's the thing, right? People are coming to me saying, Junior, Miguel, is it my mitochondria? Is it this? Is it that? And we have to just not even step one, step zero, before we can even have this conversation. You're not even stable right now, man. Like we need to calm it down. We need to relax a little bit before we can even start asking questions. Because if we can't stabilize first, any answer that I'm going to give you, we're moving off rocky foundation here, right? It's not stable. So I think step zero, how are you responding to your immediate situation at hand right now? I think that's the first step for sure, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. Like you have to build from, you don't have to have a strong foundation. You need to have a decent foundation. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty at all. Yeah, you're going to have some anxiety and some symptoms here and there, but the best thing you can do, and I always say this since day one, I've said this, the golden rule of recovery is responding well to symptoms. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean respond perfectly? No. What does that look like? That means, how would you describe that? Responding well to symptoms. I guess it's hard to define, but we've always said just try to respond 1% better than you did previously, or just respond the best you can, whatever that means in this situation, whatever you can do to get out of this panic mode and try to work towards a sense of safety and calmness. Even if that looks chaotic, you want to intentionally try to move yourself towards a feeling of safety by telling yourself, it's just a hypersensitive nervous system. I'm going to be okay. This is temporary. I'm going to be stronger after this once you learn how the adjustment periods work. But how would you explain responding to the symptoms to people?
I've learned a lot in this coaching journey, and I've made my fair share of mistakes. And we change and tweak information as we learn. That's just a part of growth, and that's a part of being a human being. And in the past, back when I started coaching, I had the belief that responding well was an overall emotionally positive experience, right? I would tell people you want to feel feelings of gratitude and happiness and positivity and calm and joy and all these things. And there's a big part of the community that says if you feel that, then you should probably make it an active effort to get away from things like grief, sadness, depression, anger, impatience, anxiety, frustration. And so what were we doing there, man? If we really take a realistic look at it, we were painting emotions in a really black and white way. At least that's what I was doing. I was putting certain emotions under the good umbrella and certain emotions under the bad umbrella. Come to realize now, I've learned a lot more since I've been coaching for quite a while now, is that there is no good and bad emotions, man. There's a gray area here. We can't be telling people to stay away from feelings of frustration, anger, depression, sadness. That's an inevitable part of life. That's something that people are just going to naturally feel in their lives at some point, one point or another. What I've learned is that all of these emotions are neither good or bad. They're necessary. All of them, right? Happiness is necessary, but also so is sadness. So is anxiety, but so is excitement, right? So is grief, but so is joy. And with all of these necessary emotions, we no longer tell people to stay away from certain emotions and only try to gravitate towards certain emotions. But more so, we're now trying to teach people whatever emotion that you feel, as long as you can approach it in a healthy, balanced, resilient, and regulated way, you'll be okay, right? Because Miguel, you and I, we're a perfect example of this, right? Because we've stayed recovered, the follow-up question could be, Miguel, are you recovered because you stay away from emotions like sadness, depression, grief, and anger? Or are you recovered because you still feel those things, but you know how to respond and approach those emotions in a healthy way and work through it instead of ignore it and run away from it? You know what I mean?
It's the second one. You can't, these are just part of the human experience. They're inevitable. So you're exactly right. They're not good or bad, right? You just have
Mhm.
to roll with it and not judge the emotions. But when you find you're getting stuck, or not stuck, but it's almost getting too much for you to handle, I
Mhm.
think a way to respond well to symptoms, or just respond well in general, is you can always bring it back to almost like that middle ground
Yeah.
towards more neutral, not too hard in either direction. Because you're right. If, let's say, you're feeling sad one day, then you try to force yourself to feel happy,
That's just
your
silly,
your
you
brain
know?
knows what you're doing. It's going to call you
Yeah.
out and you're going to feel more sad,
Yeah.
or you're going to feel happy for 5 minutes and then feel super sad again. And that creates this crazy kind of up and down cycle of emotions. That's chemicals in your brain going all over the place. So working
Yeah.
towards a place of more neutrality, or a place that you don't feel like the emotion is running you, that's going to be better, because emotions are what run the amygdala. The amygdala is what runs the fight or flight systems in your body. And that's really what perpetuates the
Mhm.
symptoms. That's what perpetuates CFS.
And so for me, my definition of responding well now, I never tell people to try to get away from certain emotions anymore and gravitate towards positive, happy emotions, but more so I teach them how to approach those emotions in a healthy way. So for example, hypothetically, let's say you and I are hanging out or something, right? And you do something to piss me off or to make me upset. I feel the anger come up and surface, right? I acknowledge it and I say I'm angry, and then I go, Miguel, you shouldn't have done this, and blah 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 blah. And then I'm raising my voice and I'm yelling. That's the action that I choose to exhibit, the behavior that I choose to show because I feel anger. That's the part that makes people sick. It's not the anger that makes people sick. It's what you're doing with the anger that makes people sick. Because let's say we're in the same exact hypothetical situation. You did something to make me upset, and I felt the anger rush up. I acknowledge, okay, I'm angry. I'm not going to try to suppress it. I'm not going to try to ignore the fact that I'm angry. I am. But then I'll say, Miguel, you shouldn't have done that, man. Here, let me show you how to work through this a little bit better. And I'm saying this and I'm behaving like this whilst I'm feeling anger. I'm having a regulated response. I'm responding well, even when I have a specific emotion come up. That is what gets people well. So, what does that mean? It means you can actually feel anger and still recover, because it's not the emotion that makes you sick. It's what you do with it afterwards. That's really important. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh yeah. We are getting into some advanced topics here for you guys watching this right now.
Yeah, I know.
We split up our topics inside our communities, inside of our recovery systems, into, there's fundamentals calls, and then there's integrations for people who have learned the basics. They're starting to come out of this thing, reintegrating back into life. And that's where you're going to hear a lot of this deeper talk about emotions, because once you realize that's where a lot of this stuff is coming from, it's not everything, but a lot of it is coming from that. You realize if you can get a handle on that, especially after you recover, you don't have to worry about getting this again. But yeah, before we go too deep down some rabbit holes, just wanted to
Yeah.
introduce you on this channel. We could talk for 12 hours if we wanted to, but
More videos to come on these. Yep.
absolutely. And we'll have Junior and the other coaches break down some specific topics, exactly like how I break down certain roadblocks and problems in recovery, and bring my experience, what I went through, how I dealt with it, and then some solutions for you guys that you can try implementing, seeing if it helps. But Junior, we're just excited to see more videos of you. We already have a bunch of videos in the pipeline that we're going to be releasing over the next handful of weeks here, but
Yeah.
just excited for it, man. So
Thanks,
you
man.
guys watching this right now, stay tuned. A lot more Junior and the other coaches to come, some different angles of sharing these principles with you. But if you need any extra help, some free resources down below. And if you need more help than that, you could also see if you qualify for any of our other recovery systems. So hope you guys enjoy this one. This was a longer video. Definitely watch this one or listen to it back. But always remember that you are a thriver, and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. So we'll see you guys in the next video.
See ya.
I would say that CFS recovery is absolutely the real deal.
I actually felt like somebody had an answer, like somebody explained what was going on, and it all clicked.